Welcome guys to another episode with the Doomed Hell. Today we're going to be talking about a very interesting subject. I think that is a bit controversial, but also a bit interesting for us merchants, us, used market buyers. And that is that I think Turing is a better architecture than Ampere. As we know, Ampere is the new NVIDIA graphics card architecture. They boast a lot of performance, they boast more shading units than last year in a significant way, but the performance per dollar is not necessarily as good as you think. As you know, a lot of us are talking negative about Ampere. Why is that? Because Ampere has not that great CUDA core performance. So historically, I think I've talked about this before. Historically, NVIDIA has had the CUDA core as their mainstream processor. It was kind of a rebranding, and it's not really much to talk about. However, historically, they've pushed the CUDA core very, very far. They've implemented their very own API called CUDA, which was named after, obviously, they were both named around the same time, and there was kind of a reason to do so. CUDA was a very powerful API and dominated the market for a really long time, and so people expected very good performance, especially in the workstation realm of CUDA cores and NVIDIA GPUs in general. However, Ampere is a really interesting architecture in terms of that aspect. It is the worst performing GPUs per their CUDA cores. So in the past, CUDA cores have been more powerful. They've had better performance per watt. They've had better performance per the thermal, and they've been able to cram more of them in their dies. Now, that's not to say they couldn't cram even more CUDA cores, but the common theory was that more CUDA cores wouldn't modulate as well as NVIDIA would expect. So that is why a lot of us excuse the weird amounts of CUDA cores in NVIDIA's graphics cards, and we've also expected that more 2,000 CUDA cores from Kepler is less powerful than 2,000 CUDA cores from Maxwell, and 2,000 CUDA cores from Maxwell is less powerful than 2,000 CUDA cores from Pascal. That was kind of expected. However, Ampere has completely changed the formula in a lot of aspects, but the main aspect is that they've pushed 60% more CUDA cores, but they're pushing less than 30% more performance. That's looking at the 2080 Ti versus the 3090. We can look at really any graphics card. Any of the graphics cards from the new Ampere series, especially the RTX 3060 Ti and the 3070, cost more than the used Turing graphics cards, have quite a bit more, almost 60, even more CUDA cores than previous generation, and are performing in average less than some Turing cards. Now, what do I mean by performing less? Well, because you see that we can clearly see in terms of benchmarks that the new Ampere cards are actually dominating versus the Turing cards. However, there's a factor we haven't talked about yet, and that's overclocking. Turing cards were reliably very good overclockers and have dominated the market in terms of their overclocking. Okay, maybe RDNA 2 overclocks better, but overall, NVIDIA's graphics cards have always overclocked really well, and that's always been a factor. That's why the GTX 1080 Ti was still pretty good gaming performance 2 years ago, a year ago, and even today. However, the new Ampere cards have totally changed the formula. They're packing more CUDA cores, and it seems as though they're less stable at high overclocks. We don't know why, but it seems as though you can't be pushing 2000 megahertz even on a 3080 or 3070 graphics card. That's kind of crazy. That's new. That's an actual downgrade in some instances where clock rate is more important than sheer stream processors. And so that's where Turing is kind of an argument. Turing has slightly better memory bandwidth, has better clock rates, and overall just is more efficient per CUDA core. And sure, yeah, TDPs of the new Amperes are kind of good, but they both boast around the same amount of pinouts, and so you need around the same power supply for both of these. Actually, if you look on Tech Power Up and on NVIDIA's website, NVIDIA recommends a 650 watt power supply for their Ampere cards, for the lowest Ampere cards to this day, which is the RTX 3060 Super, Ti, sorry. And so if we look at even a 2080 Super, that's around the same amount of power supply that they're asking, which they're actually asking less. They're asking for 600 watt power supply. So that's kind of interesting. It seems as though they're, Turing is better bang for buck than Ampere because of all these factors. Another thing that we haven't talked about yet is the aftermarket support for both of these graphics cards. The RTX 3060 Ti and other Ampere cards have had a lot of issues at launch, and I'm expecting most of its lifespan in terms of its aftermarket cooling. It seems as though they're harder to cool. If we look at their founder editions, they're the biggest founder editions that they've ever made. They're like triple quad slots for a single graphics card. That's kind of insane. Previously, we were looking at single slots, half slots in really old times and medieval times in terms of graphics cards, but we were pushing triple slots, copper, vapor chambers, and liquid coolers for the aftermarket. It seems as though now there's a lot more triple slot aftermarket, but a lot less liquid coolers and vapor chambers for the aftermarket. There's also a lot of issues in terms of PCBs, VRMs. It seems as though people are cheaping out because NVIDIA was asking too much out of their PCB standards. And so that's why the Turing cards might actually be better for you if you're a gamer. They boast better overclocking performance. They have sometimes better aftermarket CPU coolers. They have around the same power supply limits. No, I don't think 50 watt TDP is a big difference. It doesn't, like, I wouldn't pay $50 for a 50 watt TDP difference. By the way, I wouldn't even pay $20. If one of the two graphics cards performs better, and one of them is way cheaper than the other, I would buy that one, and that is Turing. That's enough for today, guys. It was a short video, but I thought it was necessary for me to talk about it because Turing prices are getting cheaper, and it is definitely worth looking into if you're looking for good 4K gaming performance. I don't suggest buying a 2080 Ti. Those are still expensive, but a 2080, 2080 Super, 2070 Super are all very good price to performance, especially the non-Super versions. It seems as though people have used them for longer, so expect less money for them. And you can always negotiate. I think that's about it for today, guys. I hope you enjoyed, and have a good day.